almost there. For some reason, the bring it back to the beginning button didn't work, but
Sean, I'm
there.
thankful that you know enough about technology to realize that it's always a little glitchy, especially with me.
Well, especially with cutting edge technologies too. I mean, with we run a lab here that we've dubbed Vital. Oh no, does it keep going? There's a lag, so it's like going in circles.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for your sense of humor there.
No worries. While I'm working through it, I can start chatting. So, yeah, let me let that lag catch up to itself. And one of the things that we do is we run a lab and an initiative called Virtual Immersive Teaching and Learning. So that currently involves 35 faculty from across San Diego State University, as well as several different California State University system schools, including Sonoma State and Sacramento State, where we provide the hardware and some basic software training and accessibility for faculty and students. So one of the things that I was just mentioning with the, adapting to tech issues, especially with this cutting edge technology, is that it seems like every time I power up Steam or the Oculus Store or the Vive port, it needs an update, or it's not working at all, so the whole computer needs to be restarted. So I think it's just the nature of the hardware and software being in a very early stage. So faculty, staff, students all need a bit of a sense of humor and patience and tech savvy to work through this. But that being said, there's also a pretty wide range of options as well. So there's everything from creating content with 360-degree cameras, which are pretty much just one button, which is nice, to actually using a game engine like Unreal or Unity to develop custom content for the head-mounted displays. As I'm getting back here, I think I'm given enough time to catch up with the lag this go around. I'll talk a little bit about some of the students, and I'll get back to this later, but some of the students that are actually creating content for our faculty and staff include two organizations. So we have the Aztec Game Lab, which is an SDSU student organization based out of the Department of Computer Science, but it is comprised of a wide range of theater, art, film, and computer science students. And they're actually experimenting with this technology, but also developing content for other courses. And the ethos, now that these slides are working, the ethos that we've created this with in mind is this kind of adaptation of Confucius's famous saying, circa 450 BC, which is, tell me and I will forget, show me and I may remember, and then we've adapted this to say, immerse me and I will understand. So that real kind of experiential, problem-based learning that's possible
through simulation is really elevated with this new form of virtual immersive simulation.
So I'd like to
ask, just via the chat, that everyone
kind of throw out there what are some questions, experiences, frustrations, successes that you've had related to immersive technology. So that can be anything from this kind of screen-based virtual world to if you've experimented or taught or learned with head-mounted displays. So I just want to kind of gauge where you're at as an audience. The expense of creating usable simulations. Immersive, the technology that works on mobile devices, absolutely, but sometimes the fidelity and the quality is a little bit different. Cost of getting equipment, so definitely the hardware. So it sounds like the two ones there that are kind of thematic are cost of both the software and the equipment. And then that question about mobile technology is one that addresses the cost of the equipment anyway, because most students and faculty already have mobile devices, or the classrooms have already purchased iPads, smartphones in some cases, things like that. And then Eileen also pointed out that the development tools themselves are pretty expensive. Yeah, so we've encountered a lot of that as well. Scalability, I think the costs both point to issues of scalability, particularly related to cost. And then industries are using, so Donna asked, what industry are using this technology to what success? And that's definitely something I want to talk about a little bit, where it's been successful, particularly in healthcare. And then lastly, Eileen talked about how Unity is difficult. And yeah, I actually, in my doctoral program, I was allowed one non-college of education elective. So I took a computer science course in 3D game development. It's based in C# using Unity. And I was able to eke my way through, but it was definitely challenging to learn computer science, learn C# from like a proper computer science standpoint. So it can, it's not quite as simple as kind of a GUI environment. So we're going to get into a lot of that. The reason that right now is really an exciting time is because of what's new currently. So to give you some context for how we're identifying, viewing, and referring to these technologies, augmented reality, and actually I'll point out that this is all based on Milgram's continuum of virtuality, which is from 1994. Where he posited that on one end there's the real environment, and on the other end there's the virtual environment. And the closer you get to the real environment, simulation in that arena is augmented reality. And then the closer you get to the virtual environment, that's what he referred to at the time as augmented virtuality, now referring to as augmented reality. Everything in the middle is mixed reality. So augmented reality, we say, can bring anything to you. Virtual reality can bring you anywhere. So with augmented reality, it can be an overlay, like in the case on the slide, of information about storefronts that are located on the street. Also, holding your phone up using an app like Skyview, where you can see constellations in the sky with information on what the constellation's name and where this constellation is going to be visible throughout the night sky, things like that. Virtual reality can change the scale and location of your environment, so you can go and observe celestial phenomena happening in outer space, or biomedical phenomena happening at the micro level inside the human body, to low frequency, high risk scenarios like being in a disaster situation where you want to teach or learn about how to respond to disaster situations. Mixed reality in the middle, where things like the Microsoft HoloLens and the Magic Leap 1 devices enable you to see overlaid information, kind of like with augmented reality, but contextualized in your physical environment. So for example, just like in this simulation, if I walk up on the stage, I'm not just walking through the stage, I'm stepping up on the stage. You can interact with holographic content in your space that interacts with physical content, not just as an overlay. And it uses infrared trackers and cameras based on this device that both sense and project that infrared in order to do so. This equipment has gotten relatively inexpensive with recent releases like the Oculus Go, which is $200. Augmented reality and infrared being built into a lot of the cell phones that we have now, with the iPhone 10. And then mixed reality headsets, given that they include the computer and the display and everything you need for $3,000, is relatively expensive, especially in contrast to some of the more advanced simulators like flight simulators and mannequins used for medical education. So those can be far more expensive, in the range of hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not up in the range of $1 million for a flight simulator. And recently, just in the last few months, VR has really hit mainstream. So in 2017, there was a study that Walmart conducted in partnership with Stanford, involving 150,000 Walmart associates in 20 Walmart locations, where they used Oculus Go. Actually, in this case, they used Oculus Rift to deliver training that used to be delivered with a trainer in the room. And in comparing that traditional modality of teaching to this virtual experiential mode, it increased exam scores for 70% of the employees compared with pre and post, and it resulted in a 30% higher satisfaction score on average for employees. So based on those data, Walmart decided to purchase 17,000 of the Oculus Go headsets just a few months ago in September in order to train over 1 million Walmart associates over the next couple of years. So some exciting stuff happening in corporate, really mainstream. I don't think Walmart's necessarily known for being truly innovative. That brings us to nursing education. So we identified this as an area of possible benefit from this technology given the cost of simulation. So there's a big problem in the United States and elsewhere, that is the shortage of nursing professionals. So this is expected to be over 1 million nursing professionals by 2020, and it's being contributed by a lack of financial resources, scarcity of nursing faculty, and a shortage of available clinical placements for these nursing students out in the real field. So over the recent past, this has been addressed by using simulation, so by using these expensive human patient simulation devices, which is a proven method. Simulation in general is a proven method for transforming the novice students into expert professionals. However, it's unavailable in low-income areas, rural areas. We have a satellite campus in Imperial Valley on the border with Calexico, Mexico, and Mexicali, Mexico, where we have a nursing school in our satellite campus there, but they don't have access to the same simulation devices because it's rural and because they have less revenue based on the tax structure there and things like that. So that worsens the limitation of financial resources and further contributes to the nationwide shortage, especially in those low-income and rural areas. And just to give you an idea of the different simulation devices in contrast with the immersive simulation devices that nursing uses is the partial task training type device. That's anything from the CPR devices that you learn how to perform CPR with, to an image here in this chart is a mannequin arm that the students can practice inserting intravenous drip systems, etc. with. That ranges anywhere from $500 to about $20,000. High fidelity mannequin. So that is a mannequin that actually has a computerized system inside that can respond to stimulation. It can produce liquid, bile, waste, stuff like that, so that the nursing students can actually participate with different procedures and experience what the results of those procedures are. Those can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then kind of the gold standard for nursing simulation is considered the standardized patient. So that's having a real actor one-on-one with each student that can exhibit signs of both medical and psychological ailments and actually respond to the student's feedback. So that is anywhere from $20 to $40 per hour on a one-to-one basis. So all of these can get very expensive very quickly for nursing schools. So a potential solution that we identified is the hollow patient, which is a virtual standardized patient. So taking that idea of an actor and transforming that into a hologram that students can experience and interact with using the Microsoft HoloLens. So we partnered with Microsoft, Pearson, which you probably know is the largest textbook publisher in the world, and Texas Tech, and our School of Nursing here at San Diego State. So this ultimately became my doctoral research. It was initially a project I was working on just as a staff member here, and we were able to go up to Microsoft's headquarters in Redmond, Washington, and capture this gentleman here. Jared is his name. He's a standardized patient from Texas Tech. Using this array of 125 cameras, 25 of which are film video cameras and 100 of which are infrared, to create on the right-hand side, you see the holographic content that was created as a result of that, where the students can go through the different phases of the illness. In this case, we worked with our nursing director to identify a few different scenarios. The one that we chose for this is anaphylactic shock. shock. So that's what they call a never scenario. So the students should never see that in the clinic because the patients should not get to that point where they're actually in anaphylactic shock. But nursing students need to know what that looks like. So if they ever experience that as a nursing professional, they know which code to call to the doctor to administer the antidote to the allergic reaction that's happening. So that's why we chose that. And what we did is we actually wanted to, one of the things that we heard from looking at the literature and from talking to people using this technology is that it made for a more satisfying and motivating learning experience for the students. So we wanted to look at that, so we based our research in the theoretical framework from John Keller, that's called ARCS model. So that is the ARCS stands for Attention, Relevance, Confidence, and Satisfaction. And his theory states that all four of those domains are necessary for the content to be motivating. And this is based on Eccles' expectancy value theory, where really your confidence in your ability to do something times
the value that you see in doing that equals your motivation. So if you don't have confidence to do something, it doesn't matter how valuable you think it is, you might not do it. And if you don't value it, it doesn't matter how confident you think it is, you might not invest the time. So you really need both. And then Keller expanded on this. And ARCS is specific to educational technology content. So it posits that it needs to be attention grabbing and holding. It needs to convey the information in a way that's relevant for the learner. It needs to do so in a way that they're confident in their ability to learn and master this content, and in a satisfying, well-designed delivery. So the research question that we were looking at is, does nursing student motivation to learn and skills and knowledge differ as a result of the modality of instruction employed? So we looked at three different groups. We looked at a group of students receiving just a written case study describing this scenario where this guy, Jared, is in a bicycle accident and he comes into the hospital with a laceration in his shoulder. He gets stitches and antibiotics and painkillers, and then is held in the normal 20 to 30 minute observation time to make sure everything's okay. During that time, he starts to experience hives, itchiness, anxiety, shortness of breath, and each phase of the anaphylactic shock gets worse and worse until he passes out and dies. So the written case study in kind of the control group, or group A, goes through that process with just written description, which is currently how the students learn about something like anaphylaxis. Group B received the simulation, but in a two-dimensional delivery via a computer screen. And then Group C received three-dimensional holographic content via the mixed reality HoloLens device. So the population included 3 levels of nursing students. So nursing students that are fresh to this kind of clinical practice and have almost no clinical experience. Level 2, where the students have some but not extensive clinical experience. And level 3, where they actually are in a registered nurse to Bachelor of Science in Nursing program, and they have anywhere from several months to 40 years in one case of clinical experience already. And then those 161 students in that sample were divided evenly amongst the 3 different research groups of case study, 2D delivery, and holographic delivery. So the instruments that we used to collect these data included a pre-survey that included information about the clinical experience, so how much experience they already have in the field with actual patients in the clinic. their nursing and immersive simulation experience via separate questions about how many hours do they have with high fidelity nursing simulation, low fidelity nursing simulation, VR, AR, mixed reality, etc. And then a measure collecting information about their digital quotient. So rather than intelligence IQ, intelligence quotient, this is the DQ, asking questions about how many days per week do they check their email, and do they have a smartphone, those kind of questions. 40 questions that together represents the digital quotient. The ARCS model represented in the Instructional Materials Motivation Survey by John Keller, and the skills and knowledge measures developed here within our School of Nursing related specifically to anaphylaxis. So what we found is that both the 2D and the 3D were more motivating than the case study alone. And the red X you can see up there between, so actually at the bottom on the X-axis, the first one is their overall motivation to learn within the group of the written case study. The middle one is the 2D video, and the far right is the 3D HoloLens. And the red X on the line connecting the 2D video and HoloLens indicates that although there's a slight increase, it's not significantly it's statistically significant based on 95% sureness, So in other words, there was no difference statistically between 2D and 3D simulation, but there was increased motivation using a simulation in general. And when we broke that out across the 4 domains of the ARCS model, we found there were significant differences between 2D and 3D in attention and satisfaction. So in other words, the HoloLens was more attention grabbing and holding and satisfying than just a 2D video, but the relevance and confidence were unchanged. And in fact, the confidence was unchanged between written, 2D or 3D. So students were equally confident across all 3. And then also looking at skills and knowledge, there was a significant difference between the written case study, and this essentially mirrors that of overall motivations. There was no difference between 2D video and 3D HoloLens, but there was differences between written case study and both of those. All right, so I want to open it up for questions now, and you're welcome to unmute yourself or type, just related to that specific work that became my doctoral work. And then for the second half, I'll talk about more generally how this immersive technology is being used across disciplines at San Diego State. So any questions at all related to our approach to the study?
Well, I have a question if others, I'm wondering too, you had a different population, the demographics, you had, anything from new nurses to senior nurses. Did you see any differences? Were you able to tease that out at all?
Yeah, so one of the things I didn't present in this slide deck, but I did have to do in my dissertation defense, is we looked at the predictive analytics based on those criteria. So the short answer, Eileen, is that we considered those as covariates in the analysis that you saw. So we took into account if they had lots of clinical experience or lots of VR experience, we included that in the analysis of covariance to see if those, to essentially account for those differences to make it an even playing field amongst those that have a lot of experience and those that didn't. So that's where the statistical magic that I understand but couldn't get into the math of why it works, but it was able to level those out so that they all were treated equally and those covariates did not complicate things. But the second part of the analysis, we looked at regression analysis and path analysis to see if having more experience or the age, we also collected the age of the nursing student or their digital quotient or what level they were, all of those to see if those played a role in how much their knowledge and skill changed, and the differences in student motivation. And what we found is students were more motivated if they were younger and if they had more clinical experience. So there seemed to be kind of a sweet spot, because there were correlations between age and experience, as you might imagine. But there was a sweet spot between students that were younger but already had a lot of clinical experience. So that's kind of the unicorn of the type of student that would benefit most from this. And as somebody who's been studying nursing education and simulation for a couple of years now with this project, I would say that's because they can contextualize what they're seeing more effectively. The students with more clinical experience can contextualize it more effectively than somebody who's totally fresh to nursing in general. However, younger students tend to be more open to new teaching modalities. They tend to be more digital natives. And so they responded more positively to the content.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience before Sean moves on?
All right. Well, we'll have time at the end too, if you think of something related to that study. So the Virtual Immersive Teaching and Learning Initiative at San Diego State, as we dubbed VITAL, it really allows us to look at scaling this up across modalities. So I want to give you a couple factor myth questions. So I'd like if you could type in factor myth or F or M for all three of these. So the first one, supporting the use of immersive technologies requires a purpose-built space. Do you think that's a factor myth? Okay, so far we have one myth, one fact. Okay, another fact. Depending on what you mean. Or myth, depending on what you mean. Yeah. So it looks kind of evenly split at the moment, maybe a little bit more in line with immersive technologies required a purpose-built space. So honestly, pretty mixed. So I would say 2 years ago, or even a year and a half ago, I would say yes, it requires a lab for immersive learning. But now with the readily available devices like Oculus Go, Vive Focus, all of the Magic Leap 1, all of these devices that don't require sensors in a room and don't require an area blocked out. I think now that's kind of a myth, that you can use these out in the field. So if you're in a clinic, for example, you can pull up a holographic information right there in the clinic. If you're a technician working on an engine or working on any kind of mechanical device, you can pull up a HoloLens or something that actually has a camera on the front that somebody back at the lab can annotate right over your view and say, hey, you got to fix this gear right here. So, and I'm seeing Donna's specifying purpose-built space to me means also a space of my own where I need technology to involve myself in this type of learning. So, and interestingly, now we're in this virtual space, so I think you can interpret that in lots of ways. But the way I'm suggesting it is here on campus, this can be used now, given these more mobile technologies, out in any classroom. And actually, going back to that first question about can it be used via mobile phones? Yes, in an augmented reality fashion, using the camera as kind of a pass-through to overlay content, and using the split screen with the accelerometer built right into most smartphones, where you can actually move the phone around in a Google Cardboard or another type of smartphone viewing virtual reality headset, and use the phone as the display and the engine and the Wi-Fi connection and all that stuff. Okay, second question. Factor myth, immersive technologies are very expensive. Right. It's relative. Is Carl's response. Myth, fact, and myth. Yes. Define expense. Fact. So I think what we're getting at here is it's all relative, right? So if if you have no budget, then anything's expensive. But I would argue this is a myth. And the reason I would say so is because even if you compare the immersive technologies, the Oculus Go for $200 or the Lenovo Mirage for $400, those are still the same price, if not cheaper, than some big, thick physics and chemistry textbooks that we see students having to purchase. So we are in another initiative here in the same department of instructional technology services. We are investing in resources that are open education resources, where students can get online textbooks for free, where faculty across the world, around the world, yeah, OER, exactly as Eileen's pointing out. If we invest in OER technologies so that students don't have to buy as many OER resources rather, so students don't have to buy as many textbooks, maybe we have more funding for technology. So I totally agree with that. And also, if you can supplement in one class require that they purchase a device or a software or something, we already require that students purchase thousands of dollars every semester in textbooks, so why not supplement that with technology instead? And then also, if you look at certain disciplines like medical, where they already spend a lot of money on simulation and people running those simulations, this can be a lot cheaper. So, lastly, creating a space capable of supporting immersive technology requires professional staff. So let's say, given that the first one was already decided, creating content and supporting immersive technology requires professional staff. So less and less nowadays. I agree with that. Myth. So I agree it's less now, but I still think that it requires professional staff. And the reason that we say that is because, A, it's constantly evolving. So there needs to be some guidance, at least for the faculty that I've worked with here, the 35 faculty. They're constantly looking to us to say, hey, is this going to support what I think it will? How can I create this content? Can you connect me with people that create the content? Where do I even go to look for the content? It's definitely not like smartphones or desktop computers where people are just expected to use it. So right now it definitely requires professional staff. How many professional staff? That's right now we're doing this kind of on top of everything else. So we don't have dedicated professional staff. I know some of the other more well-funded and elite institutions like Carnegie Mellon, MIT, even Arizona State University are investing in staffing on a permanent scale for this. So currently we have, as I mentioned, 35 courses at San Diego State University in all 7 colleges, plus our 2 auxiliary colleges. And we also have 2 student organizations, the Aztec Game Lab and the SDSU VR Club. And then a third one that just started getting involved is the SDSU Artificial Intelligence Club. So all of these are meeting in our Vital Lab on a weekly basis and actually partnering with faculty to deliver this content, which is really exciting. I'm going to quickly go over a couple of the different spaces that we have and kind of the different archetypes that we've identified. So we have a small research lab, not necessarily for instruction, but for academic research, and that is our neuromechanics and neuroplasticity lab, based in our doctoral physical therapy program, where they're actually looking at movement disorders like Parkinson's and measuring stimulation and treatments and effect based on virtual reality. So they actually do those treatments and then connect the the patient to a driving simulation and then measure their feedback based on heart rate, temperature, all of those things. So that's kind of the small research lab. We have 6 learning research studios where this is embedded in. So we have a Vital Lab, but we also have mobile technology that can be used throughout these, where this is a small-ish level, so anywhere from 20 to 60 students can participate in these learning research studios, which are really active learning classrooms that faculty reserve for the entire semester. This is our virtual immersive teaching and learning lab, which is one of those Learning Research Studios, which has 2 HTC Vives and 2 Oculus Rifts, which are kind of the, getting to the outdated technology at this point, given that they have to be connected to computers, as you can see here, and actually have to have sensors built into the ceiling and walls. And then lastly, we have our large lecture halls where we're enabling faculty using, this example is a HTC Vive with a VR backpack computer, but also these new untethered wireless technologies are enabling faculty to mirror what they're seeing on the large displays and teach in front of a large class. So I talked a little bit about the neuroscience research already, giving different stimulation to the students, or to the patients rather, and then measuring their neural activity, their body feedback, etc. And then we actually are also using that same ARCS model of motivation to learn with our astronomy faculty and students. So one of the more difficult things to teach in principles of astronomy, which is for non-astronomy majors rather, is phases of the moon. So teaching students why the moon phases go the way they go, and some of the questions include, if you're standing on a waxing crescent moon looking back at the Earth, what phase is the Earth in? Things like that that are consistently challenging for students used to be taught in this manner, where with a light source and a styrofoam ball, and now actually using this technology for the last 3 semesters, we've been teaching with Universe Sandbox in HTC Vive and Oculus Rift, where the students actually move the moon in this realistic space environment and then actually walk over to the moon and look back at the Earth. So it's far less cognitive overload trying to imagine all of that stuff with a styrofoam ball, but actually seeing fully rendered, spatially oriented objects. So what I'd like to ask you all is if you were going to iterate on the study I mentioned before, or replicate that type of study, what would you change and what would you keep the same? Or what other ideas do you have around assessing the efficacy of this type of simulation? Carl mentioned that long-term follow-ups come to his mind based on his background, and that he wants that from every study. So longitudinal is definitely better if possible, but obviously that presents some challenges based on how long you have access to the subject of the students. So the content learned, that's where that skills and knowledge piece comes in, Eileen, but I think there's some room for improvement there. We used a kind of homegrown measure of skills and knowledge based on our faculty here at SDSU. What we'd like to do is adopt a standardized nationally normed assessment that can be replicated elsewhere. So it's not just our own kind of internal metric of skills and knowledge. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going here. Oops. So I'd like to let everyone know that we are facilitating. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go back and see Alan and Carl are mentioning a couple other things. Revisiting for retention. So again, that goes kind of that longitudinal piece where I agree that it would be better if possible. So potentially in the future, we'll have access to those students maybe longer. And then Carl, can you let me go back? Actually, I'll pull up my chat window. Transference of the nursing schools to actual practice. Interesting. Yeah, that's something that we hadn't considered yet, but actually following up, that goes back to that longitudinal, following up with those nursing students and maybe checking in on their professional status and how they're being evaluated in the real world, in their kind of professional environment. So we are running a little bit short on time, but I want to mention that we're facilitating a system-wide common interest group at the California State University system to discuss this kind of content, studies, etc., on a monthly basis. If anyone's interested in participating in that, we happily invite people outside of the CSU to participate. Today, we actually had Arizona State University and a company called Labster out of Denmark talking about a fully online bachelor's of biology, of science and biology, where they complete a series of wet labs via a headset, actually a Lenovo Mirage Solo headset, using these virtual labs. And they talked about some of the early findings with that. So those are the kinds of discussions that we have once a month. If you're interested, email Eileen and she can put me in touch. If that's okay with you, Eileen, she can put you in touch with me, and I can send you the invite and let you know. It's every second Wednesday via Zoom web conferencing, every second Wednesday from 12 to 1 Pacific time. And that is all I have. So I open it up to questions, feedback. Yeah, so Donna asks, are students requesting this type of learning experience? So not necessarily. There are some services we offer, like lecture capture, for example, where we video the content for the students, where the students are now going to their faculty saying, hey, why aren't you using lecture capture? Students aren't doing that yet, to my knowledge, with this kind of virtual immersive technology, but they are coming to us saying, hey, we want to start student organizations, I want to join student organizations. So it's more that they're exploring it, particularly in the computer science students, but they're not demanding it yet. So we'll see. I do teach a class in the College of Education online, although my main role is staff. And there is requests for more interaction, but they're not calling immersive technology by name. So Scott asks, I'm curious how you have put this in use for arts and humanities. Arts, especially like fine arts and studio arts, those are, or maybe not studio, but anyway, the arts in kind of with a capital A is actually pretty straightforward. We have, there's a couple different like painting and illustration apps within immersive technologies, as well as creating and editing 360 video footage. Humanities is a little bit more challenging, but there are some faculty that are looking into that as well. But we don't have as many solid examples of that. Any other questions? And I'm happy to answer any, if there's anything that comes to mind later via email. I'm happy to connect.
Yeah, funding for STEM is a little bit
funding for STEM is a little bit easier, given that there's a lot of funding already for STEM, and particularly in medicine and others. So I think the nice thing is if we can fund things like the VITAL initiative here that can potentially be funded maybe by STEM dollars, but then used for STREAM or STEAM or however you want to talk about it. Carl asked, Professor Joan, let's see, I'm pulling this up. Kenyon College Biology is also a writer and has published a novel dealing with higher ed using VR. Yeah, cool. I will check that out. I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to copy this over to my web browser. Cool. Thank you for your feedback, Scott. And yeah, and for your comment, Carl. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Eileen, so much for hosting me here. I learned a lot just by checking out this space, and I'm kind of amazed at what you guys are doing.
Well, and I'm hoping, sorry about any echoing, that we could partner up on a number of different areas. Oh, no. And I'll be getting back in touch with you about some of the groups that you're starting, because I think we could have some mutually beneficial interests. And we would like to invite you into our spaces so that you can see how we're using them and give us more ideas. We go low budget, and so I'm also hoping that over time, as you test more things in your environment where you have the equipment, because we are 100% online, we have to assume our students have to be able to purchase things. So the more you can tell us as to where to go. Also, I'm looking for easy ways that faculty can develop uses with AR and VR. Right now, the VR that we're sitting in is quite easy. It's pretty well available. You can get parts and pieces, and then you can go beyond it. But we would like to be able to find some apps that could help us develop augmented reality in some of these other areas. So I'm hoping that you will be keeping us apprised of what's going on. And whoops, I'm getting something in front of me here.
Yeah, likewise, I'm hoping. Sorry to cut you off. And likewise, I'm hoping. Sorry to cut you off there, but I'm hoping also that those tools become more democratized and easy to access, so that you don't need a computer science degree in order to develop content with them. So, but Eileen, I totally agree. Given the differences in our approaches, I think we can learn from one another without having to, replicate necessarily. We can say, oh, don't necessarily do that. We already learned that failed, but do try this and help us, validate our findings.
Now, that would be wonderful. And Sean, I want to thank you for taking your time to come out and see us. And next time you can transport us out to sunny San Diego. And yeah. Well, thank you. And I'm going to, hopefully I've got somewhat of a recording, and I never know until it's finished because of all the different sound issues. So we'll have this. I've got some shots, and thank you very much. I'll be signing off myself soon because I have to get packed to leave. And thank you, Sean, and let's keep communicating. And we've got wonderful students here who have very interesting lives that they can bring forward. So thank you all. I'll be leaving myself soon. So this group knows they can always hang out here. This is their space. A number of these people actually have their own islands, too. So, yeah, I will say goodnight and thank everybody for coming. And safe trip home, everybody. You don't have far to go, I hope. Take care.
Good evening.